Okay, that was a good speech, Kishore. I must say, set the context beautifully for us to truly go through the next couple of days. So thank you, all of you, for a full house. Good to see all of you. I know that it's a bit of a challenge coming on time in Bangalore. You could get stuck anywhere at any point in time. Kishore was telling me that last night he got stuck even at 12:30 in the night. So there's a traffic jam does not really have a specific time they show up. But so good to see all of you. I think it's phenomenal in terms of how 17th edition, as 17 times you've done this over and over again, maybe with different names. And I know that we started off with a bit of a different name for this summit, and then eventually we ended up choosing this. I mean, we have, in Nasscom, we look at different sectors and we do a lot of things, as you know, but the engineering group has always been, so, very, very unique, and then they provide a lot of clarity in terms of what they really need. And then I think, I don't think there's any other sector today which has this much of focus, and then the ability for them to get the group together, and the fact that they come together to truly build this as an industry agenda rather than an individual company agenda. So I've always been very, very pleased to sort of engage with this group. This started multiple years ago, and as some of us would recall, I remember starting off in it's always been a sort of a side show to the major tech show that everybody had, engineering services, and then of course we sort of clubbed R&D into it. So engineering R&D has always been for the large players, it's always a small group. And then of course there are several companies which started purely focusing on ER&D as a platform, and we had wonderful companies those days. It was called Infotech and Scient and KPIT, of course, and LTTS, and I don't want to name all of the companies, but they all brought the focus of what this actually, there's so much of potential in looking at engineering, and then the R&D associated with the engineering in many ways. So the thing which I want to talk about today is sort of give you some context as to where the global shift is actually making a difference. And because of all of that, when the global product innovation, which Kishore talked about, are getting that much more software defined, no longer it's sort of the traditional hardware that people were dependent on, then they become a lot more intelligent and sustainable, and the expectation from this ecosystem is going to be very, very different as you kind of see this. So the stuff which brought the industry or brought the ER&D to this level, to $57 billion broadly in revenue, whether it was scale, execution, talent, all of that is important, but that's not going to take you to the 100 billion, which Kishore put a chart together saying that we're going to be 100 billion in 2030. It is going to be a different game altogether, right? It has to be very, very unique in terms of aligning with whatever else is going on in the industry. So talking about what is going on in industry, let me give you a sense of what I believe are the sort of the four major shifts that are sort of rewiring around us. I mean, these are not by any means comprehensive, or I'm not even pretending that these are the only things that you need to worry about. But I do think very strongly that there was never been a time when these all four things come together. Sometimes we deal with a lot of change, some other times we deal with a lot of uncertainty, but I believe that now we have to deal with both uncertainty on one end, change in the other end. So let's look at some of this and see what is really going on in this. Of course, the first one, I don't even want to begin where to start, because the geopolitical and macro changes that we are seeing every single day, including today. You woke up in the morning, you look at the newspaper, or you look at whatever that you see. There's new news, and it's usually contradictory to the day you read in the previous day. Every single day you're going to find this, and then it's not done yet. You're going to go for long. So I always say that the impact with the geopolitics has on our businesses today has never been this much ever before. Right? This is probably the time where we have the biggest influence of geopolitics, and the whole supply chain disruptions, and of course the macroeconomic changes. Everything is going to create a situation where businesses will have to be a lot more agile. I think we have a session later on from my friend after I get off the stage. He's going to talk a lot about the macroeconomic change. I presume that's what you're going to talk about, right? Okay, thank you. Clearly, resilience is actually becoming as important as growth. Remember, we always used to measure growth, and efficiency was a bigger deal. But I think today resiliency becomes a lot more critical, especially given that all of these geopolitical tensions that you see is going to be that much more critical. And again, I don't want to. Today is not the session. We can deal with for the rest of the day on what is really going on with the geopolitics, and especially with the recent happenings around talent mobility, etc. But we won't go there today. But the second point which I want to make is sometimes we miss this. The traditional growth engines for everybody, whether it is you're in IT services, whether you are in ER&D, whether you are in GCC, whether you are a service provider, doesn't matter where you are, your traditional engines of growth is actually fading away in many ways. And I think, Kishore, you kind of alluded to the fact that, how do you really shift and then look at the new sources of revenue that you need to find. And this is also true for many organizations as well outside of our industry. But it is important for us to pay attention to that, because the annuity revenue, which many companies, especially the service providers, have lived with, is under a lot of threat, and companies are under a pressure to deliver a lot more with less. So that's something which you're going to find as we move forward. The third is, of course, there is no news, and there is no presentation today. I'm telling you, not one single speaker is going to come here and not utter the word AI, and so I'll have to do that as well. So AI is everywhere, and as all of you know. But it is important for us to know that software engineering as a principle has changed fundamentally. And this is something which is, at least to me, that is going to have a biggest impact. Even in the ER&D sector, you're going to find, because we're going to have all software-defined everything, the way systems are conceived, they are built, they are designed, they are coded, they are tested, they are deployed, they are whatever else, they're maintained. All of that has fundamentally changed. The traditional view of SDLC and traditional view of how software is built, we had all this agile, all of that is changing dramatically because of generative AI. Specifically, of course, the agentic AI will also make a bigger difference on how that is being done. And the last, of course, is the whole shift to this intelligence age, as we call it, because enterprises will move beyond the traditional digital enablement into something which is a lot more intelligent. So now the revolution is going to be intelligence-led in many ways, which means that success will not be defined by access to information, but it is going to be defined by the ability to truly generate some insights, because nobody wants information, they want insights, they want to know what that is going on, they want to know what you want to do, because even the insight is not enough if you don't have the intelligent action which will be associated with some of this. So in this environment, if you broadly see, engineering will remain the cornerstone of a very resilient future for this industry broadly, not just in building products, but also in shaping solutions in many ways for global challenges and so on. Also give you a sense of, Kishore talked about beautifully. He had actually better slides than I did, but I think it's important for you to know that we are roughly about $56 billion revenue for the engineering sector. Lots of good organizations have been able to set up either the GCCs or service providers. I think all of them together making a huge difference. So nearly half of the tech exports, growth-wise, if you not the quantum, I think R&D is small, but if you look at the growth in 2024 was all R&D led. So thank you. I mean, the fastest growing segment for the broader technology industry is actually ER&D. So we want to give a big round of applause to, I also want to call out Kishore and his leadership in terms of we do have different councils, as I mentioned before. I think the ER&D council is well run, as his leadership has just provided such a big impact for us overall. So this is growing through leaps and bounds in many ways, and many times when we wake up and we find that we needed the sliver of growth in the overall industry, which is usually comes from the ER&D sector many of the time. So nearly, as I said, half of the last year's export growth was actually from the ER&D sector. But you saw beautiful numbers, and Kishore put a nice chart which says we're going to be $100 billion in revenue by 2030, if everything goes well. And then, of course, you all will play a big role in making sure that the growth is driven by the digital engineering, automotive, AI, mobility, and so on, all critical global priorities for us in some sense. And then they just talk about talent a little bit, because I think India is the third largest engineering talent pool, as you can see from the chart, with 1 million ER&D professionals around. This represents 13% of the ER&D talent base. So having said that, I think what you would need for the future is going to be a little different, and we'll say that a little bit. But I also want to tell you what is really changing in this industry, right? I think it's important for us to sort of focus a little bit on that. The global R&D centers that you see are moving up the value chain. This is something which is no news to all of you. But today, the teams here are designing, architecting the next generation products across all the industries that you spoke about. You spoke about aerospace, automotive, semiconductors, healthcare, etc. And the engineering service providers are now evolving to be the tier 1 partners for the globe. So the engineering service providers, we call them ESPs, are no longer the transactional vendors. There were days, I remember this, I don't know that Kishore, you remember this or not, I'm sure you do more than I do. We were into conversion of 2D to 3D drawings. I remember I worked for a company, very large company, which had a small engineering division. So we looked at this whole business, and the whole idea was to sort of truly kind of being a very, they don't want to do it in the West, so we were doing it for them, etc. Those days are gone. I mean, this is no longer the CAD/CAM days where this whole engineering space was defined by all of that. I mean, today, look at the innovation which these companies are putting together on the board. We've come a long, long way from where we are. Deep tech momentum is certainly accelerating. 3,000 startups across, AI, biotech, etc., which is also going to be significant for this engineering group in many ways. So over the next decade, of course, India will be one of the largest end markets as well, which means it's not only making for others, but we will also be one of the largest consumers in many ways. Automotive is a great example. I think sooner or later, I think this will become one of the, if not the largest market for automotive, which also means that our companies now have a local testing ground, because the domestic market is always seen as not very sexy. Everybody wanted to do exports, right? But that's going to change. And by the way, our domestic market actually grew faster than the export market even last year, even technology-wise, I'm saying the overall industry. So you're going to see many of those changes. So I don't want to belabor the point. I know that we're going to be short of time, so I'm going to keep the rest of the slides pretty quickly, because I think Kishore covered a lot of these. And we see some of these mega trends appearing, and it's, again, for those of you who are in the industry, it's no big news, but the software-defined everything catches my attention every single time, and the impact that it has, because it's software-defined everything on our user experience is also quite good, because you could have an over-the-air updates and so on and so forth. How many times you experience over-the-air update? You know about mobile phones, but for your car, for example, I mean, there are deliver features over the air, and then suddenly you bought a car, and after 2 years you're getting a new feature which is significantly change your experience that you have with that vehicle. So those are going to significantly make a difference. Same thing with software-defined networks. I mean, software-defined everything. So I think that's I think the whole product evolution, if you may, shifting from hardware-driven to now software-driven is very, very exciting. You're going to see that trend continuing as a service model, whether it's software as a service as a software. We won't go into the details, but all of that is going to change this area significantly. Material innovation, I think, phenomenal. I think today the material sciences have become so much core to product innovation and what people do, and they're behind the scenes, so you don't really see them, but I think they make such a big difference in terms of producing lightweight materials, 3D printing, sustainable alternatives, and so on. Computing, again, has gone through the roof. AI, quantum, high performance. HPC is coming back into fashion. Remember, HPC was a big deal 20 years ago. Everybody talked about high performance computing, and then it kind of went completely quiet. Now it's back in fashion, and so you will find that technologies are powering everything from drug discovery to autonomous systems to self-driven cars and whatnot. Fourth would be electrification. Again, can't say enough about the impact that EVs have had in the world. Renewable energy, decarbonization. Again, I'm going to go a little faster, and so apologize for that. But that's the thing. But also, there's a new realm of possibilities. Whether it is space tech, tomorrow we're going to talk to the chairman of ISRO, in terms of what he thinks about space tech and the opportunity for all of you as organizations. So we'll wait for that conversation to talk about space tech. But look, frontiers like space exploration, be it satellite engineering, if you may, all of that, air mobility, all of this is going to fast emerging. So now when you look at that and then look at, juxtaposed with what are the, specific avenues or vectors of growth for this industry, we believe that there can be kind of, here and now, what you see is in the horizon one, then a couple of years down the line, we'll see horizon two, and then a little bit later, maybe 5 years down the line is the rest of it, depending on the maturity of where we are as an industry. Applied semiconductors, of course, rising demand for chip across the automotive, telecom, consumer tech, all of them. So that's something which is so hot, a lot of relevance and what you can do as an industry. Robotics, humanoids, all of this is going to gather a lot of momentum. Energy and sustainable technology. This is, truly transitioning towards renewables, clean energy. You'll find that there's a lot happening in that space as well. Again, in the horizon two, I will not call out the bioengineering. Of course, this is a beautiful convergence of life sciences and engineering. I think you can't get better example of what really is in the while clearly not as mature as the rest of it, but I believe that in about a couple of years it's going to gather a lot of momentum, and same thing to do with, of course, autonomous vehicle, etc. Especially in a country like India, will gather a lot of momentum in a couple of years down the line. And of course, the Horizon 3 is something which we believe is also important for us to pay attention to and prepare as we go into the next. So, what does it really mean for us, in terms of capturing this market, if you may, which is, both, it's not enough if we just re-engineer, but we also need to sort of reimagine everything from the scratch. I did intended to spend a lot of time on this, but I am not going to do that given that my time is up. But I just do want to leave you with two broad areas. One is around the talent, and then other one is around industry. So talent is basically saying we do have this large STEM base. We all talk about demographic dividend for India, highest number of software engineers globally, but what is required, and when you see in the industry, is going to be very different. And that's a sad reality which will, most of us have gotten an understanding of it, but some of us have still not woken up to the fact that this is going to be this will sort of jolt us up if you're not reacting on time in terms of changing the talent base into what is required for the future. Fundamentally, it's going to be different. You're going to find this whole core engineering plus AI fluency plus digital, all of that has to come together as capabilities for our people as we move forward. Same thing to do from a mechanical to multidisciplinary systems thinking, because problems don't show up in verticals and silos. Problems show up broadly. So how do you make sure that you have enough people who have multidisciplinary capabilities? So bringing together those capabilities will define the talent of the future in many ways, right? And of course, last but not the least, the whole human plus agentic capability. We believe that the whole hybrid work model, which is a combination of humans and agentic AI, will actually define the way talent is going to be the future. And what are we doing from the industry side? I think this is again interesting that, Kishore, you dealt with this whole R&D intensity beautifully. 0.65% today of the GDP. Most countries are above 2, some other countries are above 3. How do you really get there? There's a role which the government will have to play. Of course, they'll have to play, and they will play. There's a role that the industry will have to play. There's a role that academia will have to play. So this is something which is an ongoing topic. Enough said, but I think now it's time for us to act and see what we have to do. And patent quality, that's something which is worrying us a little bit, because if you really see from an institution side, educational institution side, their filing ratio, meaning filing to grant ratio, from the time you file the patent, when do you really get the patent? Their ratio from filing to grant is 1%, which means that for every 100 patent educational institute is filing, they're only getting one granted, whereas in the corporate sector it's slightly better, not slightly better, a lot better, but still not good. It's 40%, which means that for every 100 you get 40 granted. So we got to fix all these numbers, and especially on the educational institutions. What are they doing in terms of, especially in AI? I mean, I'm not talking about in general, in the AI space. So that's something we need to go back and understand, So they always, this tripartite, educational institutions, academia, industry, and then government. We got to pull them together and make make something out of it, whether it is R&D, whether it is skill ecosystem, whether it is patents. How do you make sure that the IP stays alive, etc. So yeah, I will probably wrap this up, because otherwise I think I'm getting some cold stares from the organizers here. But they can't get me off the stage, because that's why they're not that hesitating. But I'll have to get off the stage myself. I know we have a lot of interesting topics to come, but so I want to wrap it up. But I want to tell you, by inviting all of you, look, India has built world's trust because of its scale, because of its execution, because of the talent, all of that. Great, right? This story is phenomenal, with be it our ER&D, be it our regular technology, etc. But what we need to take this forward is going to be very, very different, and that's a reality that we all need to understand. And I hope this summit is all about shaping the next decade, or the next decades of engineering talent, and what we really need to do. So I believe that there's a lot to be done, and then let's make India the place where the world comes together to engineer tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to all the rest of the sessions, and glad to see some of you known faces, but we'll continue to engage throughout the next couple of days. So thank you very much.